Your ancestors fell in love, got married, and lived happily ever after. Or did they? In this video, I'm sharing with you the basics for finding your ancestors' marriage records and, well, when things didn't go as planned, how to find their divorce records as well. Hey there, if we haven't met before, I am Lisa with Are You My Cousin, and this YouTube channel is designed to help you find your ancestors, grow your family tree, but not be overwhelmed in the process. So if that sounds like your cup of tea, you're in the right place. Now today's video is sponsored by archives.com, and I'll be sharing a little bit more about them in just a moment. Okay, so let's talk marriage records, and let's start with the basics. Because whether you are new to genealogy research or you've been doing it for a while, having a good review and a good understanding of the basics for any topic is always a good idea. So what about those marriage records? Why marriage records? Now first, it's important to understand how marriages were recorded in the time period and the location for where your ancestors lived. Were religious bans required? Was a marriage bond required? These are common early intent to marry types of marriage records. They were designed to ensure that a couple had no legal or religious impediments that would keep them from marrying. Now, eventually, these types of records gave way to the marriage license and marriage registrations that we are familiar with today. So just what type of information can you glean from an ancestor's marriage record? Well, turns out quite a lot. Now, those early marriage records, while may leave you wanting more clues, they do give you some important clues other than the bride's and groom's names. Certainly, when you have the bride and the groom mentioned, you have the bride's maiden name. And that's always a win for any genealogy researcher when you're struggling to build out some of those female lines that you might have. Now, other things that you want to pay attention, particularly on those early records, because there's, again, not quite as much information on them about our ancestors, but you want to make sure you understand any witnesses or bondsmen that might be named in the record as well, because these are typically people who were associated with the couple. They could be friends, they could very likely be relatives, they could be brothers, they could be cousins. I've even, certainly seen fathers mentioned on these records as well. So you do want to make sure that you make note of anybody who is listed alongside the couple and to make sure that you understand who they are and how they might possibly be related. They could be clues, important clues for future research. As I mentioned, archives.com is the sponsor of today's video. Whether you are a beginner or seasoned researcher, Archives offers everything you need to begin your genealogy adventure. Archives focuses on providing a diverse range of census, vital, immigration, and military records, and serves as more than just a database, but a partner in your genealogy research. You can seamlessly attach records to the Family Tree Builder and find new details about your ancestors using the Discovery feature. With users of all skill level in mind, Archives ensures affordability for everyone. Owned by Ancestry, but operating completely independently, Archives assures a more focused collection at a lower price point, with many users discovering unique records not found elsewhere. If you want to dig deeper and find search tips, you'll want to check out their help page and their blog. You'll find expert advice on specific record collections, research goals. Start the journey with archives.com today to uncover stories to connect to the past. I'll have a link in the description below. Now, as we move forward in time and we're looking more along the lines of a marriage license or marriage registration, oftentimes we can see some really fantastic amounts of information that are being included. Again, bride and groom's names, obviously, but we might have their ages listed. Well, if we have their ages listed, we can do a little bit of math and determine a potential date of birth, right? So we might also see the parents might be mentioned as well. And if you can find the parents mentioned on a marriage license or marriage registration, that is fantastic, because what does that do? It gives you 2 generations on one document. And that is, again, always a win when it comes to genealogy research. So you definitely want to make sure you're looking at that. Additionally, you might find occupations named for a particular ancestor. And that's a great clue, because some occupations actually created their own records and have their own record sets that you could potentially use in future research projects as well. Now, if your ancestors were like mine and mostly farmers, that didn't help a whole lot, but still, it gave me a good idea of who they were and what type of lifestyle they had. Now, make sure you understand who the officiant was, because some of these records do list who married the couple. And if you know who married the couple, it doesn't take much research to understand perhaps what faith they could have been in or what church they might have been a part of. And that, again, that could lead you to future clues for future research as well. Now, I can hear you asking, but Lisa, how do we actually find these marriage records? And absolutely, that's a great question. And you've got definitely have several options here. Now, for a church or religious marriage record, you're going to need to check with the church itself. Now, for civil marriage records, you have a couple of options. You can certainly request a state level search, usually through the Office of Vital Records, for a marriage record. Now, that name may be different from state to state. It is not consistent across all 50 states, but you can request a search there. Now, these typically do cost money and can require long wait times for obtaining that record. Now, when it comes to actually finding it, many states do now have a genealogy section on their Vital Records Department's page, and it gives you detailed instructions on how to actually ask for a search or order that marriage record. Another option you have is to request the marriage at the county level, in the county where the marriage occurred. So if you know the county, then you want to check with the office of the county clerk to see if they have that record. You can ask for a search or order the record itself. Now, another place to find marriage records is actually in the county where the marriage actually occurred. These are typically kept at the office of the county clerk, and they do require a fee typically to search or obtain that record, and the wait time can be quite lengthy. And the third option you have is certainly using online genealogy databases and resources such as today's sponsor, archives.com. Now, if you enjoy learning how to get the most out of your genealogy research, be sure and hit that subscribe button on the bottom right-hand corner. That way, you'll be notified when I post brand new videos here on the Are You My Cousin YouTube channel. Okay, so let's talk about those ancestors who didn't live happily ever after, whose marriages ended in, well, divorce. Have you looked for an ancestor's divorce record yet? Well, they actually contain a lot of information potentially that will help propel your research forward. So what might be in those? Well, you might find things such as certainly family dynamics. If it's ending in a divorce, you're likely going to pick up on some types of personalities or family dynamics that are happening. You will find the couple's names mentioned. Sometimes you can find the woman's maiden name, which is always a good find if you're struggling to find, perhaps if you didn't find the marriage record or it didn't survive and you're trying to find the maiden name. You might find the couple's children mentioned. You might find other family members who are mentioned, such as parents or siblings that could be mentioned. You could potentially find their original marriage date and or marriage location. That can also be potentially mentioned in a divorce record. Now, where would you actually find a divorce record for an ancestor? Typically, these are definitely county level records, and you will need to usually find them at the county superior court offices. Now, if you're struggling to find them there or not quite sure how to reach out to them, then I do recommend that you simply reach out and contact the county offices there and see the best way to make those requests for searches. One thing to keep in mind is that divorce is not new. So our ancestors were able to obtain a divorce even in early and colonial time periods. It just wasn't as common, and it certainly was not as easy. And we have to, as researchers, understand the process that they would have had to go through in order to obtain a divorce. So, for example, in early 19th century North Carolina, if someone wanted a divorce, they had to actually petition the North Carolina General Assembly, so the state legislature. They had to petition for a divorce. And in that petition, they had to provide a significant amount of evidence as to why they felt a divorce was warranted. So while a very difficult thing for our ancestors, those divorce petitions provide a lot of information for us as genealogy researchers that we definitely do not want to overlook. If you would like to learn more about your ancestors' birth, marriage, and death vital records, be sure and watch the video on your screen next.